My good people, oh praise y'all. We're back today with another one, and I just want to see if I get into it, man. Asking that Father, y'all, you just open our hearts and minds to receive your word and your instruction as it is written, and I also ask that you give us the heart to apply it, because that's where a lot of us feel that we can quote the verses, but when it comes to application and the time that we should apply it, we just find every reason not to, or we don't look for any reason at all. However, we still do not apply it. So, I pray that you give us a renewed heart. And these things I ask in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach. Amen. Now, when I'm speaking to a person and we start to go there, uncovering the things that we see, the hidden mysteries of this life, the organized evil, corruption that's in the world, I always start out by asking them, hey, listen, how deep out of the rabbit hole do you want to go in? Or rather, how far out of Babylon do you want to come out of? Like, do you want to get just 15 minutes from outside the city? Or do you want to travel an hour outside of Babylon? Or do you want to go far, far, far away from it? All of that will depend on the individual, because I've spoke with people, and they may stop at the fact that, hey, Shemitic people are people of color, and so they just focus solely on that. They may stop at, hey, white supremacy, or they may even stop at the laws and the prophets and didn't keep going to be led eventually to Mashiach, like Paul. Paul was on the road to Damascus, and we know that he was all for the laws and the prophets, and Yah seen it fit to bless him, and he was brought to Mashiach, or rather Mashiach seemed to have been brought to him. Either way, how far to Babylon do you want to go? When you really realize that our ideas of love and marriage and a relationship have been predicated and based upon the people who were tasked with keeping us asleep. Therefore, you need to question everything from these people. If you learned it here in the West, you need to question the rest. I want to hashtag that. You know what I'm saying? But truly, you really do. So that being so, this lesson called Him and Her. Let me get kind of vocal for a little minute. In the wild, I want to ask you a question. Why does nature sometimes seems to prefer larger genitalia in the wild on the males? Keep in mind too that most animals have been documented not to really enjoy the sexual reproductive act. There's only been a few species that have been documented to actually enjoy it, but most don't. So a bigger male genitalia wouldn't equate to more pleasure. We know that. Have you ever heard a cat mating? It sounds like anything, but it sounds like she's dying, especially when they pull out with the little barbs and the genitalia, and they scratch up the surface of the wall, and that's to ensure fertility so that the seed will have a better chance at germinating. I just gave you a big clue to my question that I posed to y'all. You see, the people who study animals, the zoologists, they report, this is their words, not mine, that in the animal kingdoms, bigger genitalia on a male is preferred because when he finds his mate, he wants to be able to go deep enough in her to scoop out any remnant, or go past any remnant rather, of another male seed that may have entered into her. His thought process is that he's the one that's supposed to be there. He was the one that was supposed to be there all along. He just wasn't the first one to get there. So, I just thought about that, because so often in scripture, we see comparisons of animals. All the tribes, if I'm not mistaken, have some type of animal attached to it in attributes, like the Lion of Judah, of course. I think one of the tribes have gazelles and the whole nine. Yeah. Even when dealing with Yahshua, he says to look after my sheep, look after my lambs. So that's what makes somebody a shepherd. So I started to examine the traits in the animal kingdom, because I'm sure that from Yah's creation we can learn a lot. Now, if the whole thing is whose seed gets there first, and the male wants to ensure that when his seed does get there, it properly germinates, say like with the felines, all of them have barbs that comes out of the tip of their penis. So once they pull out from the female or the feline cat, it scratches up the walls. This is done for every type of feline: cougar, mountain lion, tigers, panthers. It doesn't matter, even smaller cats. And this is done with that thing to ensure that the seed properly germinates, right? In dogs will do, if you ever mated dogs before or bred them, you know that they will do this thing called locking, where it doesn't have barbs, but from what I do understand, that the head will, on the male tip, will enlarge itself so that he can't pull out even if he wanted to. She couldn't escape even if she wanted to. It's to ensure that his seed travels as far as it can go, as deep as it can go. And again, without getting too vulgar, just for a second, that we can get our minds out of the gutter. Because, pleasure here isn't, again, the main focal point. It's if you're going to plant seed, and ask any farmer, especially precious seed, you really want to make sure that it's not destroyed before it does its job. We read in Matthew chapter 13, and I'm going to start in verses 3. It says, "Then he told many things in parables," speaking of Yahshua, saying, "A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Others fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seeds fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear." Oh, wow. Spoken as only Yahshua could do, let me tell you. But how, like we've all had seeds put on us. And let's focus on the good seed that was put either on us or in us. Where did it fall? Whether the good seed came from your grandmama, your mama, your daddy, or even your husband, right? Where were you positioning yourself when that seed was given unto you? Were you one of the ones that, had it fall along the path, but then the birds came and quickly ate it up so that you really didn't even have it to begin with? Were you one of the ones that it fell on the rocky places, but it didn't have much soil, so it sprang up quickly, but because the soil was shallow, it died? Think about that. I know a lot of people like that who will get something and be all for it, gang ho. I always see the loudest one is the gang is the weakest. That's the one that's going to tell on us. When something goes down, he's going to be the one to flip gangs in prison when he's outnumbered, because it never really took root in him to begin with. Therefore, it has no depth. There's nothing for him to reach from. When you got these marriages that seem to, it's okay if it springs up overnight because, the flesh needs time, the spirit doesn't. However, there's no depth, there's no root in that marriage. So when it's tried, that the constituents have nothing to reach from. They have nothing to pull from. Roots are such a thing that if you were hanging off a cliff and that cliff happened to be right by a tree, you can grab those roots. And no matter how much you weighed, those roots would hold you up. You would grab them instinctively, not even thinking or questioning whether these roots are strong enough, because, hey, these are roots. It's embedded in the earth. You would already think that they have some strength and some dexterity to them to weather the storm. And good roots, believe you me, always do. No matter how many branches get damaged by the oncoming storm, because believe you me, you're going to be tried. Also, I believe it was Yahshua who says that you shall recognize a tree by the fruit that it bears. Only seeds bear fruit. Therefore, men, take notice of this here. Because if you cannot look at your wife and see yourself in her, she's not taking your seed. And there's a disconnect. And it may be doable or something that you can overlook today. But just trust me, as that seed starts to germinate, in time it's going to become too big for you to ignore. You also have the other seed that fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Man, that's bad. It says they fell among the thorns and they grew up and choked the plants. That sounds like corrupted seed to me. People start off on a path and later on in life end up deviating from that path. Like scripture says, don't go left or right. Go straight away. You definitely want to make sure you're not one of them, because it can happen. Self-pity, constantly focusing on what you didn't have, what didn't go right, your shortcomings in life. can often lead you to one of these people who seem to be choking out good seed around them, even though you started off as good seed. King Saul is a good example of that. It says still others, and I love that it says still, because amongst all of this death and destruction and failure, still other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. And compare that using precepts with what Yahshua said when the servants had those talents or that money, and the king came back, and one was able to increase and double that, the other one didn't. He didn't bear any extra fruit. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. The name of the game has always been the seed, and who will get there first, and not just who will get there first, but which one will take. Eve had the seed of her husband first, and her husband had the seed of his creator. So Eve by default had the seed of her creator as well. That we know that was there from her very advent, her very creation. However, another seed came along, and that was planted, and that seemed to take root and became the thing that Eve gave herself over unto. And seeds can be formed and planted from many, many different people. Here's the issue we run into as men. And I'm speaking to men and women, but here right now I'm speaking to the men. Here's the issue that we seem to run into when we get with a woman who's had so many ties, so many different partners, and plant seed in or on them. And a lot of times it's both. Physical seed in the form of semen, spiritual seed in the form of demons, mental seeds in the form of confusion, double-mindedness, you name it. And we're left with a field full of mixed seeds, which we're told not to do in scripture, not to mix the seeds. Man, you ever dealt with a woman who you've been giving her good seed and she has a hard time receiving it? She has a hard time taking your word. She has a hard time trusting that word. She has a hard time staying where you have placed her and prepared her to thrive. It's typically because you were not the first one there. And if you keep digging around, you're going to find and discover that there's still other seeds at play. There's still other roots that are being worked. It's so funny because I come from Louisiana, and whenever somebody does some type of witchcraft on the person, they call it working roots. Just something to think about. What eventually ends up happening is we spend more time trying to rid the field of the bad seed than we give time into planting good seed. And still, that is a tool worked by the devil, and he still wins. We understand that our life is but a mere vapor, we're told in scripture. So what you do with that time means a lot. And if most of your time or a good deal of time can be exhausted by you trying to get rid of bad seed, then what we know you're not doing is planting good seed. And guess who that works in the favor of? The serpent. From Genesis, she had always been after the seed. You can go look in Genesis. It says that the seed of man shall crush your head. His heel shall crush your head. Now, these curses that both woman, man, and serpent all received seem to have been issued and given with all parties present. So, once one person cursed was no mystery to the other party. We all knew, and it was game on. Once it was said, it was game on. May the best seed win. Again, whose seed will germinate? And we know that Lucifer doesn't really change his practicalities up too much. So if he went after the woman then, why would he not be going after her now? Now, knowing that you could understand reading in Leviticus chapter 21, some of the rules that were given for the men. Like in verse 7 of chapter 21 in Leviticus, it says that they must not marry women defiled by prostitution or divorce from their husbands, because priests are holy to Elohim. Now, see, the reason why he wouldn't have married her if she was divorced is because in the land of Israel, there was only one reason that you would have been divorced. The only one that was given was sexual immorality. And depending on what it was, it typically equated in death. So you really didn't come across too many divorce parties. It wasn't just the woman, it was the man and or beast that had taken part in that sexual immorality as well. So, but also this kept down on situations where somebody thought they was done with a woman and then come to find out later he wasn't. You know how they see a woman's never looked as good as she does on the arms of another. And you know how many people die, how many good men died today because they simply took on a woman who was put away and did with her what the next or what the prior wasn't willing to do or just couldn't do. And that was just too much for that prior man to deal with or to see. And it resulted in murder, death, incarceration, or all of the above. So, you know what happened though? And you know who ultimately wins in situations like that? The serpent. Because no good seed got planted. Even when they got planted, what time would you have had to water it? When you're contesting with this woman's past. When you're contesting with the ghost from what used to be. So if your whole duty is to be able to plant good seed, y'all's already setting the stage to make sure that you have the time, space, and energy to focus and devote that time to that activity. And you do not want your vessel to become a form of entrapment by doing so. So he just said, hey, listen, these men, these are the women I want you to take. In verse 13 says, the woman he marries must be a virgin. He must not marry a widow, a divorced woman, or a woman defiled by prostitution. Here's the thing, and it's back on these seeds. The reason that was such a big thing is because if by marrying a virgin, she didn't really have any seed, right? The only man she would have ever known was her father. And he, along with the mom, would have been prepping her for this day that she would be married unto her husband. So the husband would then stumble upon a field or come into a field that was actually prepared for him to plant his seed, making his job a lot easier, therefore allowing the devotion of watering and nurturing that seed versus spending his time getting rid of the bad seed or the weeds and then eventually planting good seed, kind of hoping with the wing and a prayer that it germinates. Everybody wins. These are why these laws and these precepts were put in place by our Father. What happens again in this society is that by the time the man gets there with the good seed, the field has been so sown and torn and plowed through that he now has to contest with getting that field in a state of readiness. And that's only if you can even do so with the field. Because let's just be honest, you know, some women will be the man's biggest enemy. It'll be that of his own household, you know. So it may never actually get planted the good seed. And this is where we are today, where we have so much seed throwing going around, and we don't know the good seed from the bad seed because we don't even read the manual on how to properly identify thereof, you know. Fact. Even this lesson here. If you are a woman listening and you're married, I hope that you're listening with your husband, because I don't like to feed married women directly for me. That's a job that their husband should be doing. And it should be filtered through your husband so that whatever information he get is coming from him and not from me to you. So there's no implementation of me leaving remnants behind. The message that was given unto you passed to your husband. In the same way, Eve never spoke with the Most High like Yah did. Yah did not bypass Adam. Yah told Adam what to do and what not to do. Adam's job would have been to let his wife know what to do and what not to do. And we know that he did it because she quoted it back to the serpent. Well, I was told that we must not eat. So Adam told her. He told her. The question at that point is, did she listen? Like I tell my wives, your inability to follow the path that has been laid by me or to ingest these seeds that I'm planting does not reflect on my job as a good seed planter. It just means that you're not eating. In the same way, if Yah is the doc, he's the doctor, right? And he has appointed a nurse, say me in this regard, or any man who may be listening, and you are dealing with a patient. If you have been documented to make your rounds, you've been making sure that she or he gets their requirements on the hour every hour, you've been following what the doc has prescribed, and they're just not eating, that does not make you look bad. just keep that in mind, please. And some of you naysayers and investigators may be looking back at the chapter in Leviticus chapter 21 saying, hey, well, those were for the priest, the high priest, those rules and regulations. True. But are we not being formed into a nation of priests? Is not the man the priest of the household? I'm not saying we're going to be able to do everything that they did simply because we're just not in that position. But clearly, there are some spiritual ramifications and some spiritual enlightenment that can be had from looking at these texts and trying to apply them in a spiritual sense. And that's what we're doing today. The focus is on seed. What's a seed? It's information, it's data, right? It's knowledge. Eve ate a seed. It was good and bad, which made her a dualist. For every good thing she did, she knew 8 bad things. And we just can't help that. It's just in our nature now because they were the predecessors. So goes the head, so goes the body. Unless we adopt the new mind, and if you don't know what I'm speaking on, I suggest you click off this video and go listen to the Mind of Mashiach and download those seeds and then start letting those germinate. And also too, man, just because a woman isn't a virgin, don't be discouraged about that, because truth be told, the odds of you finding a virgin in today's society, especially in the West, is just slim. We whore our daughters out very, very early. And if we don't whore them out, a lot of them sign up to be whored out for various different reasons, whether it's seeking acceptance, love, or just seeking fleshly gratification, chasing an addiction, or maybe she got touched at a very early age and it ignited things that only her husband were to ignite in that controlled environment, right? This is what happens in the West. And I'm pretty sure if you're listening, you probably fall up under one of these categories I just named, or not far from it. But the biggest kicker is that if she's willing to have that bad seed extracted and will actually be willing to get out there and get her hands dirty with you, then by all means, y'all get out there and do that. You know, make her renewed, help her to become renewed. This is granted, of course, you yourself have good seed to put in that field. Otherwise, you need to get the fuck up out of here. Truth. What we don't need is more men sowing bad seeds in fields that are willing to accept. Because then what we end up having is what a lot of us men with good seed have been dealing with. Trying to plant good seed in a field that's just been ravaged. It detracts from our mission statement as binyas, as child or children of the Most High. It does. It gets in the way. We'll do it. We will do it. Men, we have to sow our seed somewhere. Like, this is why I don't teach and preach on the MGTOW movement. For those who don't know, that stands for men going their own way. You know, men who are just so fed up with the court system being used against them after they give women seed or children. Just fed up with the whole horse and pony show. They're saying, look, we're not going to deal with any women. We're not gay, but we've been so scarred from this system that we don't want to deal with them. I'm saying it sounds good, but again, who ultimately wins? The devil. Because now he has eliminated even a threat of you planting possibly good seed in a possible receiving good field. And he doesn't have to worry about that seed coming to crush and bruise his head. Now, we already know that Yahshua is coming back to ultimately deliver that final coup de grace, what we call in Creole, the death blow. However, Lucifer is looking to take as many as he can with him. And you got to ask yourself, do you want your seed to take part in that fiery anticipation of a judgment? Or do you want your seed to be properly planted in a kingdom that is on its way? This is what we have to ask ourselves all the time, both men and women. Whether it's us, whether it's in preparation or thinking about our children who are here or the ones that are on the way, where do you want them to go? It all starts with you. How they say the apple don't fall too far from the tree. You know, the apple started off from a seed. Imagine that. And where those seeds were planted or happen to fall will dictate how well it populates. And then the preceding seeds, where they populate as well. We already would think of generational curses. Well, they're only generational because it's being passed down. Someone's still implanting these seeds and we're still receiving them. And then these seeds grow up, they germinate, and then they impact other little younglings with these seeds so early in the development. So this is, again, this is what we find ourselves in this American culture in the West. And I'm saying to break that. Women, you are the field that I've been speaking about. Make no mistake about it, from your womb to your spiritual womb or your spiritual field to take this seed. We have to start doing a better job at guarding that field in preparation for the good seed planter. And if we discover that we have a field that has been so disregarded, we have a duty and obligation. Really, you have the duty and obligation to get that field in a state of readiness. Not today, really yesterday. The time is short. You never know exactly the day or the hour that the harvester will be coming back to return to see if you have actually borne him fruit. Do you actually bear fruit? I told you fruit starts off as seeds. This is more than just a relationship status. And it's more than protecting and enhancing the vitality of your marriage. This is about your soul, ultimately. But let me say this too. If a man and a woman has a marriage and it's not seeded, when you say seeded, what do you hear? Rooted. Same thing. These are all the terms that we've been used to dealing with. If it's not seeded in Yahweh or Yahuwah, through Yahshua, you most likely are not on strong terms anyway. And you will probably end up being like that parable of the seed that sprung up real quick, was real happy, real joyous all over Facebook and Instagram, flaunting the ceremony in the first few months of the marriage, but then quickly crap out. And who wants that? So make sure that your relationship, your marriage is seeded, centered, rooted around Yah. Because we're told what he put together, let no man tear apart. And I don't know the last time you went to go dig up some roots with your bare hands, but let me tell you here, those are very, very tough things to do. Even with the proper tools, firmly implanted roots are a pain in your ass if you're out there trying to husband the land. Even that term performing husbandry comes from the act of laying seeds, which only men do. Because only men can be husbands. Because only men have seeds. This is where we get it from. And then when you drop the seeds, you have to nurture those seeds. This is why the places that have plants are called nurseries. Come on, man. I hope y'all picking up what I'm putting down, right? Take this good information and spread it around. It is the New Year's. It's rapidly approaching in the spring. And this is where we are, praise Yah. Well, you're about to look at the natural seeds being swung and flown around, transferred to and fro. You know, pollen being on the backs of the bees, caught up in the little hairs that'll go and help these trees to germinate and to produce fruit that we shall consume. That's good to our fleshly bodies. May we have the same attitude and the same dexterity and the same zeal when it comes to doing so with the spiritual seeds, so that it can be nourishing the spiritual fruit to our souls and our spirits. Praise Yah. That concludes this lesson. I hope that it was enlightening to some. As always, please drop a comment. This isn't a big channel, but it's okay. Mashiach says in Luke, fear not, small flock. So I didn't expect for it to be a huge channel. But hopefully we have been firmly rooted in the viewers who do watch, so that we can all go on to plant good seed. Amen.